Hi guys, welcome back to Our Ocean World Wednesday. My name is Alia, and today we will get to explore the water cycle and our local watershed here in Santa Barbara.
This is our campus. Stork Tower can be seen in the middle, and the reef is a small building on the right at the end of Campus Point. In this picture, you can see every point of our watershed. What is a watershed? A watershed is a drainage basin, or an area of land where water combines and collects, flowing together into a common outlet, like a river or the ocean. Or in our case, maybe our UCSB lagoon or the Pacific Ocean, which holds the Santa Barbara Channel. Today, we're going to explore all the different parts of our local watershed and go over this water cycle. This is a model of the water cycle. This version is a little bit simpler to understand the connections. Here we have our three main reservoirs: the oceans, the atmosphere, and the continent. Then we have the fluxes, or the movement of water between these reservoirs, or how the water moves from one place to the next. In this case, there's precipitation, evaporation, transpiration, and surface and groundwater discharge. Let's look at this a little bit closer. In this image, you can get a better look at our water cycle right here in Santa Barbara. Stork Tower is still in the middle of our image. We have the Channel Islands off to the right and beautiful kelp forests within our ocean. We also have our different fluxes. Some of these we may seem familiar with, and others not so much. So let's start with the cycle. First, we have evaporation. Evaporation happens when the sun heats up surface water, like rivers or lakes, land, and the sea, changing the water from a liquid to a gas. Thanks to Courtney, we just learned about how water can change phases from a solid, liquid, or gas. So hopefully this won't seem too complicated. Next, the water moves as a gas known as water vapor into the clouds, creating clouds. After this, the water may get cold again in a process called condensation, changing back to its liquid form. The water will then fall as either rain, snow, sleet, or hail. Once it falls, it collects into lakes, rivers, maybe our lagoon, the ocean, and our aquifers, and seeps into the surface. Now, many of us have heard of the water cycle as being perhaps just evaporation, precipitation, and condensation. But there are a few more aspects that we need to look at. Once the water falls from the clouds as precipitation, it can become snowmelt runoff as it collects in our mountains, such as in the Santa Ynez occasionally, and then flows down the mountain into our reservoir. It can then also collect surface runoff, as the water that doesn't seep into the ground or infiltrates runs off the land into a body of water, in this case the ocean. Infiltration occurs when the water falls to the earth and seeps into the ground. When this happens, it can seep into our groundwater storage, something we'll look a little bit closer at later. Now we're missing one more process, transpiration. Let's look at this one a little bit closer. Here's a model or diagram of transpiration. As you can see, transpiration occurs when water is absorbed from the ground by the roots of a plant. This water travels up through the stem into the leaves of the plant. This water then is lost as water vapor, or water in its gas stage, as we learned with Courtney, through the pores in the leaves. Next, let's look at groundwater and the groundwater discharge a little bit closer. Here is a model that tells us a bit more about groundwater. In the water cycle, we have groundwater discharge. This is water that flows from the groundwater to a reservoir like a lake, river, or ocean, maybe our lagoon. Groundwater is water that is held or stored underground in the soil or pores in crevices in between rocks. So kind of like the little holes in between rocks that you might see. It's not just water that sits in a pool, and you can't just see it. This water is stored in between the small spaces in between the rocks and stored within our soil. We as humans often use groundwater when we drill wells and pull it up. We use this water for all sorts of things, from drinking and farming. There are many different layers within groundwater. There's the unsaturated zone, the saturated zone, unconfined aquifers, confining beds, confined aquifers, and finally, a layer of bedrock connecting us to our Earth. So that is our whole water cycle. We have three main reservoirs: the ocean, the atmosphere, and the continent or Earth, and 8 different fluxes, or ways that water moves from one reservoir to the next: precipitation, evaporation, condensation, snowmelt runoff, surface runoff, infiltration, transpiration, and groundwater discharge. It's kind of a lot, but luckily we've gotten to cover it all.
All right, thanks for joining me on our Ocean World Wednesday. Next week, you guys will get to explore runoff with my friend Elise. See you guys then.